Clemente Aguirre-Jarquin was a young Hispanic male who was put on death row and exonerated in 2018. This case took place in Altamonte Springs, Florida. He was convicted in 2006 and exonerated in 2018. The factors that led to his wrongful conviction were false and misleading forensic evidence, tunnel vision, perjury or false accusation, inadequate legal defense, judicial bias, racial issues, and many more that will be discussed later. Clement was born in Honduras, which is part of Central America, in the year 1980, and he came to the United States in 2003. He moved to 117 Vagabond Way, Seminole County. He lived there with his two roommates. Clement had entered the U.S. illegally after fleeing from his native Honduras when narcotics traffickers tried to force him to become a member of a gang. When the crime happened, he worked at a restaurant as a dishwasher and a prep cook, and the victims of the crime lived next to him: Cheryl Williams and Carol Barris. Samantha Williams, who was the daughter of Cheryl Williams, also lived there. Clement would occasionally visit with his neighbors. On the morning of June 17, 2004, 47-year-old Cheryl Williams and 68-year-old Carol Barris were found stabbed to death in their home at 121 Vagabond Way in Altamonte Springs, Florida. On the night of June 16, 2004, Mark Van Sant, who was in a relationship with Samantha Williams, went to 121 Vagabond Way to visit Samantha, who once again was Clement's neighbor. Mark arrived at the residence around 7:30 p.m. and stayed until approximately 11:30 p.m. Samantha decided to leave with Mark and stay at his parents' house that night. When Samantha and Mark left the residence at 121 Vagabond Way, both Cheryl and Carol were still alive. Samantha was scheduled to work the next day, so Mark went back to her house for her to pick up her clothes at about 9 a.m. When he went to the front door, it was unlocked and Cheryl was laying dead on the ground at the front door. Mark immediately called 911. Cheryl Williams had been stabbed 129 times and bled to death, and Carol was found dead in the living room and was lying face down in a pool of blood next to her wheelchair. Crime scene analysts found a 10-inch knife while searching the property, and the knife was found between Aguirre's residence and the victim's residence. The knife was the same make and model used at his place of employment. After speaking with the head chef at the restaurant where he worked, they determined a knife was missing. The authorities came to Clement's door and he asked his two roommates if they knew anything. He told the authorities he didn't know anything about what had happened, but later that day he approached them and said he might have had some information about what had occurred next door. Clement said he actually had gone into the home because he ran out of beer, and he said that the door was not locked. He said he saw Cheryl's body and that she was dead. He was arrested with tampering of evidence at a crime scene. Then, on June 25, 2004, just 8 days later, Aguirre-Jarquin was indicted on charges of first-degree murder and burglary. According to testimony, the stab wounds were consistent with being caused by the chef's knife that was found. Numerous forensic experts testified, including a blood-stain pattern analyst that testified that Clement's shorts had contact stains on the front and back and that Cheryl's blood was found on all of the clothing. A fingerprint specialist said she found Clement's print on the knife. Clement stated that when he went into the house, he lifted up Cheryl to try to revive her and he saw the knife. In fear that the killer was still around or in the house, he picked up the knife and said, "Is anyone there?" If both of those things were acknowledged, it could have explained why the specialist found his prints where they did, and maybe Clement's wrongful conviction could have been avoided. Clement stated that after he did not hear a response, he then went into Samantha's room. When he found she wasn't there, he ran home and put all his clothes in a plastic bag and on his way threw the knife into the grass, and that is why the police found it where they did. Samantha stated during the trial that Clement was banned from their home. One night she said that her and her family had him over, and after he left and she went to bed, she found him hovering over her in the middle of the night. It was this that framed him as a dangerous man. Based off of this, the jury voted 7-5 to impose the death penalty for murder of Cheryl and 9-3 for the murder of Carol. Later on in 2007, another fingerprint analyst, Donna Burks, testified that after she had looked at the fingerprint, it was actually impossible to read it off of the knife. She came forward with this evidence and it was concluded she was wrong. Clement tried to file for a new trial, but he was denied. Clement's attorney asked the Innocence Project for help, and they began testing all the evidence that led to Clement's wrongful conviction. They found that the evidence against him should have been excluded, and they found Samantha's DNA was found in 8 locations at the scene of the crime. She had also been heard saying that her family members had quote-unquote died for her. Clement's legal team had also testified that she had been taken to the hospital 60 times for psychiatric evaluations. Samantha denied being the killer. Her boyfriend stated that that night, although they were together, he is a very deep sleeper and honestly wouldn't have known if she left or not that night. Also, a crime scene expert testified that what was said to be a blood splatter on Aguirre-Jarquin's clothing was actually blood that went onto him when he picked up the victims. 4 people had also come forward and said that Samantha admitted to the crime. With all of this, judges were still denying a new trial, including Judge Rex Seidler. Eventually, she removed herself from the case because it was argued that she had a personal interest in the case. New sworn-in evidence and a new jury helped out Clemente's case immensely. Van Sant, who once again was Samantha's boyfriend at the time of the crime, is now married to Nicole Buzigard. Nicole came forward and stated that the night of the crime, Samantha woke Mark Van Sant up and said that she quote-unquote had a bad feeling about her mother. His new wife said that Samantha told Mark Van Sant she was going to leave and to go get her clothes in the morning before her shift. The state attorney dropped the charges before the jury was even selected. He believed the evidence was falling apart day by day the more that came through and the more evidence that was available to them. Aguirre-Jarquin was exonerated on November 5th, 2018. There were various factors that led to Aguirre-Jarquin's wrongful conviction. First off, he was a member of the fringe population. Members of the fringe population are outsiders or minority members. This made Clement the unpopular defendant. This is a predisposing circumstance where the public, police, and the Crown, and the jury come to see the accused in a negative light. This happened for 2 reasons. Clement was a young Hispanic male who had come to the U.S. illegally, so he was already at a disadvantage. Also, Samantha framed him as a dangerous man when she told the story of him hovering over her while she was sleeping. Another factor leading to Clement Aguirre-Jarquin's wrongful conviction is how the police engaged in tunnel vision. Tunnel vision takes place when the police do not look for other suspects. Instead of questioning Samantha or her boyfriend immediately and treating them as potential suspects, the investigation was focused on Clement, and in only 8 days he was indicted for first-degree murder and burglary. If they had looked into things like how Samantha made her boyfriend go back home for her the next day to get her work clothes, or questioned Samantha, or even focused on her at all, maybe the wrongful conviction could have been avoided. If the police had looked more into the circumstances and questioned where Samantha was or where Mark was, the circumstantial evidence that placed Samantha for sure at Mark's parents' house could have been looked into deeper. This led to misleading circumstantial evidence. The evidence made it look like Samantha could not have been at the house at 121 Vagabond Way, when in reality it was quite likely she could have been. If they had asked Mark, her boyfriend, more questions, maybe they would have gotten the answers sooner and saved Clement years in jail. If Mark had come forward sooner, saying that he was a deep sleeper, and it was possible Samantha could have left his parents' house, maybe Clement also could have been saved. Clement also had an inadequate defense counsel. Prior to his guilty phase, he expressed his displeasure with his appointed counsel. Clement said that his defense lawyer delayed the trial, and his lawyer kept stating how bad of a chance he thought Clement had of winning the case. The trial judge asked the lawyer about this, and the lawyer said it was not true. Even though Clement insisted it was, the trial judge dismissed Clement's claim and found that the defense was adequately representing Clement. If Clement had a better defense counsel, he may have been able to avoid what happened to him. Clement wanted to represent himself because he knew if he kept this lawyer, he would lose, but he was talked into it by the trial judge. There was also unreliable scientific evidence in Clement's case. At first, the crime scene analysts and forensic experts were certain they saw Clement's fingerprints on the knife, but then later Donna Burke said the fingerprints were impossible to read off of the knife. This was obviously a major factor that persuaded the jury and made them believe it was for sure Clement's prints on the knife and that he was the one who for sure stabbed Carol and Cheryl that night. If another expert or crime scene analyst, such as Donna Brooks, was able to testify at the first trial, this may have helped Clement's case. While reviewing the forensic evidence, his lawyers found over 100 untested bloodstains from the scene of the crime. Once again, this provided unreliable scientific evidence to the jury, and the tunnel vision the police and crime scene analysts displayed made everyone, including the judge, zero in on Clement as the murderer. There was also jury bias at work in this case. One member of the jury reported that she was extremely in support of the death penalty, and she believed it was appropriate for all first-degree convictions. Clement applied to the judge to have this jury member removed, and he argues he was wrongfully denied this peremptory challenge. When the jury member was questioned again, she changed her answer and lied and said that she would explore all options before choosing the death penalty as a sentence for someone. There is also the issues of race in this case. Knowing the amount race can impact a jury, judge, or police officer's decision, the issue of race should be highlighted. Clement, being a young Hispanic male, makes him out to be the unpopular defendant. Race is known to influence things such as the accuracy of eyewitness identifications and is shown to be a factor in death penalty convictions. The fact that Clement was a young Hispanic male could have influenced the level of guilt the jury and judge made him out to for sure have. Clement also came into the U.S. illegally. This placed him at a disadvantage because the prosecution used it in their case to frame him as a dishonest man. Another issue at work here was judicial bias. Even after new evidence kept arising, judges would not listen and continuously denied Aguirre-Jarquin a new trial. They were convinced of his guilt, and even new evidence that could confirm him as innocent was not enough for them. Overall, Aguirre-Jarquin was framed as a cold and calculated killer who stood over Samantha while she was sleeping and illegally came into the USA. He was treated unfairly and made out to be a monster when realistically he was not. This case highlights issues with the death penalty and wrongful convictions. Based off of misleading forensic evidence, inaccurate circumstantial evidence, a biased judge, a biased jury, tunnel vision, and racial issues, an innocent man was almost set up to die. This case highlights many issues that lead to the wrongful convictions of individuals, but also highlights the issues with the death penalty overall. This case shows how judges and the jury can be so sure of someone's guilt when in fact they are innocent. If this case didn't gain a lot of publicity, Clement's mother didn't help him out, or new evidence didn't come forward, an innocent man's life would have been taken away. It is scary to think that there may be other inmates on death row who are also struggling to prove their innocence and may have their lives taken away for something they did not do. In the end, Clement Aguirre-Jarquin was almost executed for a crime that he did not commit. The tunnel vision at work made police ignore Samantha Williams completely. There was inaccurate circumstantial evidence placing her nowhere near the scene of the crime when in fact it was highly probable she could have been there. The police should have investigated this further and questioned Mark Van Sant and Samantha the day Mark called the police. Clement was a young Hispanic male, and it was easy for police and the prosecution to frame him as a dishonest man who could not be trusted. He came into the U.S. illegally and seemed like the prime suspect. Tunnel vision is such an issue in wrongful convictions because as the police are so focused on one suspect and framing the case around their guilt, they are missing out and ignoring the actual killer. There were issues with forensic evidence. As it turned out years later, the fingerprint evidence that was presented was actually impossible to read. Had Donna Burks not come forward and said the print was impossible to read, Clement still may be on death row. There was judicial bias and jury bias, with members being certain of Clement's guilt, and there was nothing that could change that. Even with new evidence being brought forward, the judge would still not allow Clement a new trial. An innocent man was put through years and years of painful and tiring hours trying to prove his innocence. He is now fortunate enough to walk freely after his exoneration. Samantha Williams has still not been charged with any killings of her mother or grandmother, even after several confessions to several different people about her guilt. Samantha admitted to prosecutors in October of this year, 2018, that she sometimes has trouble remembering things when she gets out in blackout rage. Prosecutors asked Samantha how she could be sure that she did not kill her mother and her grandmother if she suffered from blackout rage. She replied by saying that she doesn't know how sure she can be she didn't do it. After his release, Aguirre-Jarquin was asked if he had any messages for Williams. His reply was, "I forgive you," and he added in, "Now it's on you and God together."